How to Date Better, a perspective through the lens of attachment. Hi, I'm Kirby. I'm a specialist in trauma and attachment theory, and I shoot these videos every day to help people navigate through tough times and understand themselves better. Okay, so today's topic is how to date better, and this is a class I taught in person here for about a year. It covered many topics over, it's like a weekly class. And the kind of the core piece of it is this idea that one of the best possible dating strategies I can embrace, or any of us can embrace really, is the strategy of actually looking inward first to understand what is even happening inside me that motivates me to be here, motivates me to act in certain ways, motivates me to say yes to certain situations and no to others, and to get really excited about certain people that maybe I shouldn't be excited about, right? Kind of all that. So there's this method I've been developing over the last couple of years, several years actually, and I called the 2-mind method, and it's basically this theoretical framework about attachment theory, trauma, and kind of this concept of 2 minds. There's a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And so let's start there. And what we're talking about here is that when we look at another person, we oftentimes think of another person as a single entity. It's like, that's John. John likes coffee, and, heavy metal music. And he doesn't like other stuff, right? And and he behaves in these various ways, right? He does this cute thing when he's around dogs. I don't know. But we think of them as like a single entity. But if you slow that down and you kind of release that idea a bit, and then you really observe someone, and you can say, I'm going to observe them at a time when they're at calm and peaceful and feeling safe. And then if I observe them at a time when they're like things have really not going well and they get like super trigger activated, we can kind of see that John has different ways of behaving. And that is kind of a key informative bit that kind of creates this concept of 2 minds. That each of us, every one of us, has 2 minds that live inside us. We've got the conscious, rational mind. There's online when we're safe and supported and whatever. And it does things like predictive modeling, math, science, rational thought, conceptual awareness. Language lives there because language is nothing but concepts. And that's kind of like in the conscious mind, and it has certain strengths and weaknesses. And then there's this other mind, which we can call the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is more like the seat of emotions. It is where dreams and imagery come from. And it's very strong on associations, like this thing's associated with that thing. And it seems to be the seat of all emotions. And I kind of picture it as this, like, that's my inner 5-year-old that's sitting at a great big control panel with all these buttons and dials on it. And this one says anger, and that one says sadness, and this one says love and excitement and whatever else. Because when we really kind of slow down and think about my lived experience and what happens when an emotion arises inside me, it's like it arises from the depths. Like, I don't really know where it comes from. I can't trace it backwards. There's this point where I can be like, I am aware that I'm feeling this emotion. It is definitely inside me. But where did it come from? I didn't choose that. It came from somewhere. And that's kind of this idea that the concept of I and me and conceptual thought and language and you and I communicating, that's all the domain of the conscious mind. That's where I lives. But there's this subconscious mind that is not really accessible to us. We can't interact with it directly. We kind of have to do these tricks and stuff. And it kind of fits with this evolutionary model that the brain kind of evolved in kind of 3 main phases. There's kind of like this, the brainstem area and the low brain, and this kind of midbrain, which we'll call limbic, and then kind of the outer brain or the neocortex. And they kind of evolved in kind of 3 major steps. And so the idea there is that the conscious, conceptual, I-based mind likely lives in kind of the outer layer, the outer third layer of the brain. And That's where the prefrontal cortex is, and the neocortex is all the wrinkly bit around the outside, and that the subconscious is probably all the stuff that's underneath. Now, that's a very rough approximation, but it's helpful when we are thinking about how we behave in certain situations. Because when you really think about it and you observe what happens, is that if I have a very strong emotion that arises inside me very quickly, it will take over my body. It will take over my mind. And there's usually very little I can do about it. Now, some people train their mind with a lot of effort and to basically maintain control in those situations. And I have great respect for that. But that's not the average person, right? That's not most people. And that's kind of what we're getting at here, is that when the subconscious, the seat of emotions, and my little 5-year-old with a control panel, there's a big red one that just says hijack. And there's times when the subconscious believes that there's some very important thing happening or a very important response needed, and he just slams that hijack button and says, I'm taking over. And when he does that, he floods the brain with all these stress hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline. These last two are really the same thing. There's different names for the same thing. There's more, but that's kind of the two that everyone always talks about. When we flood the system with stress hormones, the brain, there's all these pieces, areas that will react with all these elevated chemicals, elevated hormones. And then we have all these physiological systems inside our body that will also respond to elevated stress hormones, right? Have you ever gotten that tension in your stomach when something really scary is happening? And you're just like, ugh, for me, it's like the solar plexus kind of has this like tightening. And then if it's like really nervous, then it'll like flutter. And we'll see things like our extremities will be shaking or get super, super cold, right? Because that's what is happening is the body is constricting the capillaries further up in the arms to make sure that if like I get in a fight with a lion and he bites my arm off, I'm not going to bleed to death, right? These are physiological reactions to threat. What does this have to do with dating? Turns out everything. What the hell does this guy mean, right? What is he talking about? Okay, this is what I'm talking about. It's very, very clear that when the subconscious detects a threat or the anticipation of a big craving is about to be solved, basically like I'm super, super hungry for a cookie, and then you wave the cookie in front of my nose, I will have a very strong systemic, physiological, and emotional reaction to the anticipation of this thing I'm about to get. Or if you wave, asparagus in front of or whatever, Brussels sprouts. What's the most hated vegetable? I think it's Brussels sprouts. If you wave Brussels sprouts in front of my nose, I'm going to have a strong physiological and emotional reaction that says move away from that. And that's kind of the way I would like you to think about this for a moment, is that emotions in general, think of them as like command directives. Is that if here I am, I'm your 5-year-old inside, and I generate a whole bunch of negative emotions and I throw them into your conscious mind, what does that do? It motivates you to move away from that thing that is whatever it is that's around us, or whatever it is the emotions are about, right? If I generate a whole bunch of negative emotions around Brussels sprouts, you're going to move away from Brussels sprouts. You're going to retract, you're going to avoid, you're going to pull away, you're going to push that away, whatever, right? I don't like this, it doesn't feel good. And if I flood your brain with a bunch of positive emotions, you're going to move towards it, right? So the subconscious is doing this thing where it is looking out through the various channels that it receives data, and it is then generating emotions to flood into your brain to push you around like a big meat robot. Move towards that thing, run away from that thing. That's how it works. Or at least this is the model of how it works. And that model seems to really help us understand my own dynamics. And again, we're talking about dating here, right? What are you doing with all this neurophysiology junk, right? But it's like it matters. Because this changed my life, and it's changed the life of many people I've been working with over the past few years. Understanding this fundamental nature of who we are, the two minds, and how we cannot outwill the subconscious, helps inform us to understand what's going on when I sit down at a table across from a first date. It actually informs a great deal more than that, but when it comes to dating, this is super important because it's just like I'm here at the table, there's this human being that has come down and sat down next to me, and I'm having an emotional reaction. Why? Like, what's happening here? This person is a stranger. I literally met them 20 minutes ago. Maybe before that, I have, a paragraph of text on some profile and maybe some banter over a chatting app. But it's this like, across any way we measure it, this person's a total stranger. But yet, I'm having a big emotional reaction. Right? Not everyone. This is mostly targeted for the people that do have big emotional reactions. And it's like, my emotions are creating a tremendous positive feedback. Like I've got excitement, I've got this fluttery sensation, I've got butterflies in my stomach. It's like, oh my God, he's so cute or she's so hot or whatever. And I've got these butterflies in my stomach. Wait a second, just a few minutes ago, we were talking about this tightness in the solar plexus being a threat response. It's the same thing. The same physiological reaction is happening. Why? Because my subconscious is detecting a threat. What? How can this first date be a threat? Because I have invested into the outcome of this date, and I've already invested myself into their opinion of me. I want them to like me. I want them to approve. I want them to say yes. I want them to validate me. I want them to give me sex. Like whatever, right? I'm already invested in the outcome, and now the potential that they say yes creates tremendous excitement, and the potential that they say no creates a lot of dread. Yeah, something that might be called dread's a little bit strong, but you get the idea, right? I'm having a physiological reaction because what's at stake here is very likely to trigger my internal, already believed sensitivities to rejection, abandonment, and shame. If this is the one I want, or I want one just like this, or whatever, right? And if she says no, I'm going to feel bad. Why do I feel bad? I feel bad. Well, negative emotions push me away from something. Oh, get away from situations where someone is rejecting you. Get away from situations where someone is telling you that you're not good enough. Move away. Run from situations where a person says you're not worthy, you're not good enough, or whatever. It turns out they're not saying that at all. That's my projection onto them. I already have the wound inside me. I already have the little whispering Jungian voice that we call it the shadow. I already have that inside me that's telling me I'm not good enough, I'm not valuable, I'm not worthy, I'm unlovable, I'm not attractive, la 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 la, right? And so I'm in this situation, and what's going to happen here is what's at stake at this table, and what's going to happen the next hour. I'm going to find out whether or not this person gives me enough validation that I can silence my shadow and push it down and ignore it for a while, or they basically tell me something that allows the shadow to take over. And if the shadow takes over, I'll drop into a shame spiral, a rejection loop. That's not everyone, of course, but many people, right? Do you see what's going on here? It's like this to me, like reshaping the entire understanding of the dating process through the lens of kind of this attachment-oriented, craving, wanting thing, like changed my life in the degree that I developed this tremendous amount of self-awareness. I'm like, oh, that's what's going on here. Is that why did I even sit down at the table to begin with? Why did I even say yes? Why did I swipe right, left, whatever it is? I don't use those apps anymore. Like, why did I even do that to begin with? It's like, because I'm wanting something. What am I wanting? I'm wanting validation. I'm wanting companionship. I'm wanting someone to come sit next to me and make me feel good. Wait a second. I am sorting through these lists of people and whatever, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I'm doing all this effort and all this work because I'm trying to get something? Is that really what's going on here? Likely yes. If you just sit still in a room full of people that are talking about dating, and just listen and watch. And you'll see how much hunger, how much craving, how much like desperate grasping energy is being demonstrated, shown, exposed. And why? Because they're starting from a point of lack. They're starting from a point of, I need something. I want something. And that kind of gets into another aspect of the dating ritual that is challenging. And that is, if I start from the position that I'm here to get something, I'm already in an unhealthy place. If I start from the position of like, I've got something I want from you, or I just that I want, and it's like, are you the person to give it to me? Again, the cookie analogy. It's like I've got a special kind of cookie, that's special kind of sugar, special kind of chocolate, special kind of almonds. And are you the vendor? Are you the cookie vendor, the right cookie vendor that will give me the cookie that I want? Yes? Okay, great. And now I'm super excited about you. Wait a second. Do you even know this guy? Do you even know this girl? Do you even care? Right? So many people step into dating with this just empty, subconscious driven craving to get the emotional experience that they want. And they're just looking for a provider, a dealer. And that's why it doesn't work out, right? It starts from the point of view of objectification. You are an object that if I push the right buttons and I give you the right things, you're going to spit out the cookie that I want. Yay. And for some people, it's like, oh, I give you money, you give me the cookie I want. Other people are, I give you sex, you give me the cookie I want, right? There's this transactional nature to it. And it's very difficult to transition away from, like, when that's the way I've been doing it for so long, it's very difficult to transition. Like, you could find, you both are sharing cookies, right? Like, you got the cookie I want, I got the cookie you want. We start from this transactional thing. We have this like brief moment of like euphoria, and there's all this excitement and stuff. And then it's like, yay, right? And we're actually, and then you might actually be really well suited for each other, but you've started from the position of, I'm objectifying you as a cookie vendor, and you've objectified me, and we've mutually arranged into this like covert contract of like, cookie sharing. And there's this transactional nature to the relationship. And it's like, it's very difficult to transition away from the transactional aspect of that relationship into something that's truly, deeply connective and healthy. So what do we do about this, right? The way I see it, so much of this stuff is being driven by the unconscious cravings of the attachment wounds that live inside. To say, I want someone to be here to validate me. I want someone to be here to give me sex and cuddles and, someone to go on dates with, or, bear my children or whatever, right? Whatever your angle is, that is what you're looking for. And so it makes sense, if that's the dynamic that's going on, it makes sense to pull back away from other people for a moment, and the whole dating ritual for a moment, and say, what is it that I'm actually looking for here? What emptiness inside me am I trying to fill? How can I get to a point where I can sit down at this date with a total stranger, and I can move slowly through the vetting process to figure out who they actually are, not my projections of them? How can I be in a place of eternal curiosity and acceptance? Okay, I accept you for who you are, and I'm very interested in understanding more about who you are. And there'll be people out there that say, what are you talking about? There's no reason to do that if that guy's a jerk or an asshole. There's no reason to do that if she's a manipulative scammer. Okay, you can go with that. But I think it's much more interesting and healthy and challenging. And it challenges me to be the best version of myself, is to say, can I sit with this person even if we are misaligned, and even if they are behaving in a way that I don't like, or they've got, their values misaligned with me or whatever. And can I be present and still curious about this human being? Why would I do that? It's like, well, we've made it this far. We're on this date. Like, my choices are really just walk up, stand up, walk out, or try to make this the best possible situation I can. And in a lot of cases, the best option is just to stand up and walk out. I actually encourage that often, especially if you have a history of people pleasing. That's actually really a key thing to point out, is that if I have a history of people pleasing and self-abandonment, then what will happen is I'll make it to the dating ritual, and I will be so terrified upsetting this person or doing something awkward or being rude or hurting somebody's feelings. I'll be so terrified of that I won't actually be able to stand up for myself. And for people like that, you're playing a very dangerous game. I did that for a long time. You're playing a very dangerous game because you're hungering for connection, you're hungering for acceptance, and now you've stepped into this position where someone is offering to give it to you. And you're like, yay, that feels great. But then you don't actually have the skills to say no, or to shut things down, or to have boundaries. Again, this was me for a lot of years. And so you begin to understand who this person is, and you begin to understand where you're misaligned. And it's like, and now I really, really struggle to be authentically real with myself and authentically real with the other person, because I'm so busy trying to caretake their emotions. And of course, that totally stems from attachment wounds, right? Again, we've got yet another piece of evidence that says the best possible thing you can do to prepare yourself for that situation is to back up, pull away, go inward, and say, I need to deal with my attachment wounds. I need to find solutions for the traumas that still live inside me that will make my subconscious hijack the system and control my behaviors, right? People pleasing is a trauma response. People pleasing is irresistible compulsion that arises from the subconscious to act in a certain way and take care of other people's emotional states. Why? Because that was the best strategy for survival in your first 2 to 3 years, and probably after that. Like, every behavioral response that we would have in a dating scenario that's going to lead me to an unhealthy place is being driven by that subconscious that I was talking about earlier. Every one of them. And so the best thing I can do is to go tend to my subconscious and give it the things that it needs, so it will generate different emotions and different behavioral responses when it's game time. So how do we do that? Well, that's a long task, but it's totally possible. And anyone can do it. But let's switch channels for a second and get to this other idea that, earlier on I said, why am I even here? What am I doing? Like, why am I even pursuing this relationship with this person? And one of the things that I really strongly recommend, again, in my personal time by myself, is to figure out what my values are. I've mentioned the term value hierarchy a few times. And it's this idea that, like, every one of us inside ourselves has this idea about some things are more valuable than others. Will I choose a lucrative job, or will I choose, my kid going to a nice school, or being able to stick around with his friends, or maybe his health? Will I choose, let's say my spouse gets super sick and my child gets super sick, and it happens at the same time. Both of them need my attention. Which one do I go to first? Right? Most people would say children, but not everybody. And that's why it's important to understand your value hierarchy ahead of time, so I can sit down at the table with this other human being and say, I've got these things that are very, very high in my value hierarchy, and they will supersede everything else. The emotional well-being of my children will always be my top priority, even over you, even over any future we could possibly build together. And then I'm able to put that down on the table with my partner, or potential partner, my date, and say, do you understand? And does this align with you? And if partner says, yeah, totally. Like, I would do the same thing if I were in your shoes. You're like, great, we are in alignment, green flags. But if that person says, well, there's these exception cases, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, and that doesn't feel good for me, or whatever, it's like, oh, well, thank you for letting me know who you are and where your values are. Thank you for helping me in this process of vetting. And then you can stand up and walk away. Because see, the way I see it is that the process of dating is the process of vetting. Most of us are not good at ending relationships. Ending relationships is a skill. To do it with any kind of grace and any kind of emotional neutrality, without resentment and anger and blaming and all that kind of stuff, to do that in a way that is smooth and easy and graceful and respectful for all parties is a skill, and most of us are not skilled at it. Many of us cannot even initiate it when we know it needs to happen. And so, again, people pleasing. So if I really struggle to end a relationship when it's the appropriate thing to do, I need to understand that about myself. And if that's the way it's going to be, I need to back up and I need to be more restrictive about who I let inside the front door. I need to be more restrictive in the dating process. You know how most people decide that the date, I mean, I've heard so many people say this. The reason they picked that partner, they really boil it down and say, why did you choose that guy? And she will say, well, because he chose me. Because he said yes to me. Because he wanted me. And that was literally their only criteria. And so they say yes, and then they get all excited and they jump into this thing. And they've got all these feelings of excitement and everything else. And then they find out later that they are really, really not aligned. And this person that they said yes to, it turns out to be, have somewhere between uncomfortable and extremely toxic behavior patterns. Anywhere on that spectrum, and you've got a relationship that does not have viability, that it needs to end. But they're a people pleaser, so they struggle to end it. And now this other person's created some kind of like emotional dominance, or, this is that whole drama triangle of the victim oppressor narrative thing. Like this is kind of where that comes from. So get better at the front end. And the way we get better at the front end is I have to be very, very clear about what my values are, what I will accept, what I will not accept, what excites me, the things that I want to move towards, and the things I want to move away from. The way I see it, one of the things we can do to date better is we can reframe the goals of what I'm doing here. It's like, I'm not here to get good feelings. I'm not here to get happy, sexy time. I mean, maybe if that's it, then sure, just make sure you put that on the table so the other person can consent and agree with you and find alignment. And if you have alignment, then great, green flags, go have fun. But if that's your goal and you're playing all these other games to try to give them their cookie so that they'll, agree to come over and give you what you want, well, that's manipulative. That's dishonest, right? So don't do that. What I'm talking about here is we're reshaping the game and saying this is very much like a job interview, right? I'm evaluating your qualifications for a position that has a space of one. I've got one space in my operation that is my life and my future. I've got one position opening. I'm interviewing you to find out your viability and compatibility for this position. Do you have the skills required? Do you have compatibility? Do you fit the team dynamic, right? This is called vetting. This position is for the next, 18 months to 18 years of my life. And I'm going to be completely and wholly wrapped up in this person. There will be a key player in my life going forward, and very possibly the parent of my children. And I'm deciding based upon feel good. I mean, we're all emotional creatures, so it kind of makes sense that we would go there, but that's what I'm talking about here, is challenging each and every one of us to move beyond that. To move to a position where it's like, actually, my goal in this is I want to see you at your worst. Because when you look at, like, what's the best way to evaluate the quality and longevity of a relationship? I mean, well, there's a lot of different ways, but one of the really good ways is not how good they feel in the good times. Lots of relationships feel good in the good times. The way your measure of a good relationship is actually in the bad times. It's like, if you do have a rupture, what happens? How quickly do you repair from it? Are both people able to approach the repair process with like accountability and humility? That's super green flag. Like, how badly do you deactivate or activate or deactivate, either one? How badly do you dysregulate when things aren't going your way? Right? And so, in my opinion, when we're dating or in the dating process, one of the questions I should be trying to answer is, what are you like at your worst? I want to see you at your worst. And I want you to see me at my worst. Because here we are at this nice restaurant and, you know, you're attractive and blah, 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 and all this other kind of stuff. And you're saying all the happy words and being charming. It's like, that's great. Easy. That's like easy mode. Now let's move on to advanced mode. And advanced mode is like, no, I want to see you on a day when everything goes wrong and you feel attacked and belittled and unfair, and like, you know, your latent childhood traumas have been triggered and activated. And it's like, what do you do? How do you behave in that situation? Are you angry and throwing stuff and, you know, blaming other people for your problems and blah, 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 you know, all that kind of stuff, right? Is that the kind of person you are when the day is really, really bad? Or are you the kind of person that just goes completely silent, shuts down, disappears for a week? Or is just emotionally unavailable for, you know, who knows how long? Or are you the kind of person that's just like, oh my God, I'm having such a rough day. And it's just like, hi partner, like, you're awesome. I care about you. But I'm super overwhelmed right now. And I'm dealing with all this crap. And I got a lot of things going on inside me. And I'm just having a lot of difficulty with it. And I'm going to go figure out a way to work with that. Maybe I'll get some help. Maybe I'll, you know, do some exercises. Maybe I'll go running. I don't know. Like, is that what we're dealing with? Like, is that you at your worst day? You got this partner that takes accountability for their emotional state, is able to communicate that in a way that's reasonable enough that we can understand. They're not blaming others. They're approaching it with humility and a desire for change. It's just like, that's green flags all over. See, one of the aspects of this strategy is that I'm looking for a no. I'm not looking for a yes. Like, when I meet someone who's attractive and charismatic and putting their best foot forward, it's really easy to justify a yes. What I'm doing in the vetting process is I'm looking for clear no's. It's like, I want children. You don't. Easy, clear no. I'm sensitive to people raising their voice. You shout when you get angry. That's a clear no, right? So one of the things I'm trying to do in the vetting process is I'm trying to provoke, oddly enough, or test my partner into understanding what are they like at the extremes of their behavioral range. And are those extremes within the realm of something that I can tolerate? And I want to do the same for partner. And if you can do this together, if you could say, hey, saw this weirdo on the internet and he said we're trying to actually trigger each other and find out if we're compatible in the worst of cases. Hey, are you game to try that? And that guy says yes. Well, you've already got a green flag. But like, let's say you go like gamify it and just like, what's a situation where you're just really, really in your worst? And he's just like, oh man, like road rage, driving, like, and it's just like, and, you know, I don't know what to do about it and blah, 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 blah. Right. And they, you know, so one of the questions you can ask is, what's the last time you got really, really angry? What did you do about it? What part did you play in it? When's one of the last times you got super terrified? What were you terrified about? What did you do about it? How did you process that emotion when it was coming up? How much do you avoid any situation that's connected to that terror? That's going to tell you a lot about it. Here's a good relationship that, I don't know, apparently I said it one time and many people remembered it and they came back and told me later. But the question is, how do you take accountability for the downfall of your last relationship? That's a really powerful question. How do you take accountability for the downfall of your last relationship? And if they say none, it wasn't me, it was all them, you now have a clear no. You know everything you need to know about this relationship and this person. You see how we're looking for a clear sign of a no? Like, I'm looking for incompatibility, because incompatibilities are much harder to navigate than compatibilities. Duh, obviously, right? And so, like a game that I'll say sometimes in classes is like, if you think that this relationship is the one, if you think this relationship is really, like, you just met this person, you're in the kind of first 3 month honeymoon phase or whatever, it's just like, here's what you do. You go to a country where neither of you speak the language and you try to catch a train together where the trains are chronically late, you know? Go to a soup kitchen or some kind of situation where there's people that are really, truly disenfranchised and step into a service role together. Go into a situation that is thankless, where you are putting your effort into uplifting another person's life and no one's going to thank you for it. See how they react in that situation. Let's say you want children, right? And you're looking at this person. It's just like, bring him to a place where there's actual children. Daycare, nursery, friends' children, whatever. Like, go into a situation where you are both need to interact with small children together and watch that person, how they react. That person's like, stilted and like reserved and like, I don't know what to do here and whatever. It's just like, that is showing me that you obviously have different priorities in your system than connecting and attuning with these children. That's a good thing to know. Let's say you're a pet person and like, pets are a big part of your life. Bring this person and have them interact with your pets. That one's easy. So many pet people do that already. It's just like, if my dog likes you, you get the thumbs up. Again, that's not the best vetting process, but hey. See, what I'm getting at here is like the process in which we date better is we have to develop a much greater degree of awareness, both awareness of self and awareness of the other person, that is all the stuff that's underneath the surface. Too many people make all their decisions based upon surface level information. And it's like, and then what happens? It's just heartbreak after heartbreak, failed relationships, like, misery, this growing resentment about the state of dating and the dating pool and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, if you're doing all this stuff at the surface level, like, of course it's not going to work, because we're not fully integrated humans. 99.9% of the people you meet on this earth are not going to be fully integrated humans, which means they've got a conscious mind and a subconscious mind that are operating separately. And you're just interacting with the person that makes language and plans and has the potential for manipulation, all that other kind of stuff. No, we want to get under the surface. We want to understand what's going on with that inner child inside. We want to challenge them to the limits of their comfort zone and observe how they behave. Because when we get into a relationship together, especially if there's going to be children, they will be challenged to the limits of their comfort zone and beyond. So you engage in this kind of vetting process, and you hopefully will begin to see a greater, clearer picture of who they actually are. And then from there, you can evaluate viability and alignment and compatibility. Because the chemistry bit is not it. We see that fail over and over and over again. I mean, in millions of cases, they're decided based upon chemistry, and that relationship blows up, usually within 3 months. Why waste another 3 months? Unless that's what you want. You're like, I'm really just looking for a good time, and have 3 months of kind of excitement and peak out and, euphoric, sexual explosion or whatever. And then I know that it's going to dwindle down, and then we're going to lose interest in each other and find out how we're incompatible, and then we move on with our lives. That's fine too, as long as both people are on the same page. So looping back around to the beginning, how do we date better? And it's kind of these, at least my opinion, this two-pronged approach is that I have to get very, very real with myself, my subconscious, my inner child, and understand what are the true emptiness, lack, craving that lives inside me that is pushing me around and pushing me towards situations where I'm going to say yes and to chase people and situations that are really not good for me. And that's not their fault. Like, if I'm chasing after someone who's emotionally unavailable, that's not their fault. They showed me they're emotionally unavailable. Guaranteed. Because, and people say, well, no, sometimes they hide it. And it's like, not really. That's actually a pretty hard thing to hide if you're looking for it. And so That's the other prong. I need to be over here properly vetting, asking the right questions, pursuing difficult situations so I can observe how their nervous system responds when it is stressed out, and showing them my nervous system when I'm stressed out. Be like, oh, when you're at your worst, it's not that bad. I can deal with that. It's familiar. I can totally understand why you act that way. And they do the same for me. Great. So I deal with my inner attachment wounds so that my choosing system is better and my craving system is less. And then over here, I'm vetting based upon very intentional goals. What is it I'm actually seeking? What kind of relationship do I want to have? What are you like at your worst? Is this a situation I can actually live with? Is this a person that can occupy a meaningful place in my organization for the next 18 months to 18 years? Right? Do both of those, dating will change. You will choose different partners. You will begin filtering out people that were like just really nothing more than a sexy collection of shapes, right? Got shapes and colors, and then suddenly my reptilian brain just says like, ooh, yeah, go do that thing. And like, we can calm all that, and we can say, no, I'm going to do this with a lot more intention and a lot more fearlessness and a lot more grounded connection with my deepest, truest self. And then, of course, from there, I practice all the normal things about like good communication and vulnerability. I've got a whole video on that. And self-love, I'm choosing me instead of them, and, you know, that kind of thing. Those are all important to the process. So I wish you the best out there. I know that dating is hard. And I know that the whole ritual can just tap into our deepest weaknesses so quickly every time. It totally makes sense. It's an attachment dynamic. And attachment dynamics are always two-way streets, and they always go very, very deep. And understanding this about myself and understanding this about the other person also will help us most likely build the best possible path to the kind of relationship that I'm really looking for. I hope this has found the eyes and ears of the people that it will benefit the most, and I wish you the best. Peace.